I started this page February 22nd, 2014. I have posted every single day since then. When I used to try to apply for stuff 4, 5, 6 years, like, what do you mean he's an Instagram page? We don't want to work with a YouTuber or an Instagrammer. Now Logan Paul's in the ring. What's the next step for me in this space? Like, do people even give a F about me? And then MJF gives me a shout out on TV.
And there's an account called the Wrestling Classic.
People started hitting me up and like, yo, The Rock followed you and stuff. I didn't walk into this with this idea that, oh, I'm going to create a social media page and I'm going to be an influencer. I just did it because I liked wrestling. I knocked on their door so much and got no's so they could finally say yes to all of you. That's the way I see it.
Rewind, Recap, Relive. For over 50 episodes, the revolutionary force in wrestling interview.
My guest today is someone who made his dream and vision a reality, and that reality is a massive worldwide known wrestling brand with over 500,000 followers. His brand has been supported and endorsed by some huge names from MJF on AEW to the final boss himself, The Rock. Please welcome Justin of the Wrestling Classic.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad we're finally doing this. It should be fun.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be fun. And if anyone watching this hasn't been on your page or seen what you've done over these last almost going on 10 years, I think, with this Instagram account, can you just give the viewers immediately an idea of who you are? How many posts, stories on average do you try to get out there a day?
So I don't think a lot of people know this, and I want to put it out there. I say it every now and then, but I started this page February 22nd, 2014,
Okay.
with no intention of it being anything. It was like I was working at somewhere else at a full-time job. I wanted to connect with the wrestling fans. I wanted to like get old fans to see the new stuff and new fans to see the stuff we grew up on. The network dropped around then too, so like it was a perfect time.
Right.
But the insane thing about it is that I have posted every single day since then.
You've
Like,
never
there's
missed
not been a day I've not posted on that page. And I don't think people realize that. I'm like, do you guys know, like, there's not, like, whether I'm at a wedding, whether I'm on vacation, whether, there's some traumatic event happening in my life, that page is constantly always being updated. And it's just me. There's no team, there's no group of people. Like, if I okay, don't post anything on the main feed, you're definitely gonna get at least a story post. If I don't post anything in my story, like, you're definitely get a main feed post. But that page has been active for 10 years straight, nonstop.
That's insane. Like, that is it for someone. Like, I'll post 1-2 things maybe a day and I feel successful at that with at the state it's at now. Like, yeah, what are you up to now with how many followers first of all, so everyone knows?
I think we're at 637,000, give or take. I mean, I know once you hit a certain level, like, I know I got a plethora of bot followers and stuff now, like BOT bot, that I wish they could just wipe. But yeah, over 500,000. And it's cool because there's some people I can look at the usernames. I'm like, wow, this person's been following me since like 2015. Like, that's insane. I've been able to make genuine, real friendships with people on there that were maybe just followers of mine at one point, and then I met them in person and got to work with them, or they got to help me out with my videography, or just like helping me with things that I was doing at shows live. And then all the people that are just like in the industry that follow this page and support it, that I got to kind of like befriend or consider someone that actually knows who I am, so cool. I got stories about that, like with Bret Hart and stuff, from like being a kid and meeting him when I was 6 and crying and not getting his autograph, to being 26 years old and he's pulling me out of the line and calling me by my name and taking me to the front and signing stuff for me, asking me how I'm doing. Like, it's been crazy. But yeah.
And when someone reaches like the level you're at now, I'm always curious, did you have a certain goal when you started this page? Like, other than connecting with wrestling fans, like you said, was there an actual like numbers wise goal that you had, or were you just blown away by the growth?
No, I never, like I said, I literally had zero intentions. I mean, when I say this page was like something that I was doing for fun, I mean, like, I've told this story before, so I'm just gonna gloss over. I also made it because, like, my ex-girlfriend at the time, I dated her for 5.5 years. We broke up after this. We broke up in like 2016, but I made it because she wanted me to deactivate my personal Instagram account. You know, just trust issues. You know, too many girls, yada yada yada.
Sure. Yeah.
So I deactivated my personal Instagram account, and I was chilling one day, and I'm like, oh, I have all these cool wrestling pictures. I'd love to share them with people. And then honestly, in my own actual friend group, a lot of people weren't really watching wrestling that much anymore in 2014. Like we all grew up in the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression and you know the old school stuff. But I was like, oh, I can post about that, but also the new stuff. So I like made the page and I went on my personal page that before I deactivated and I blocked all my friends and family that I followed. Like, so when I say there was no intention, like, oh, I want this to have these many followers, I want to do this, and hopefully one day I can do that, and one day I can do that. Like, I had none of that. There was, and that's why I say, like, today and like to modern day society, I'm not sure how old you are, but like, I feel like our generation, I think we're around the same age, maybe.
25.
Okay, yeah, so roughly, kind of. Maybe not fully, but like I'm 32.
Kind of, yeah.
I'm like, I grew up in the era like like I didn't even have Snapchat in high school, right? Like I didn't have like we just had Twitter, but people didn't use it like they use it now, like it's a real place. We just had Facebook and like Nexopia and High Five. Like there was no Snapchat, there was no Instagram, there was no TikTok or anything like that. So like I feel like because I'm from that era that was like played outside till the streetlights came on.
Yeah.
Cops and robbers, my friends, stealing hockey cards from the dollar store, like adventurous, Stand By Me, childhood. Don't be wrong, we had video games and computers, and I played on Miniclip and addictinggames.com, and we had our N64s and whatever.
Yeah.
We used to get kicked off them, right? So I'm like, as much as so like I'm also that my first phone was a Nokia phone with Snake on it, right? Like, and then you have to by hitting one number 3 times. So like I'm that era that got spoiled with this technology era, right? So I know the difference. I didn't walk into this with this idea that like, oh, I'm gonna create a social media page and I'm gonna be an influencer, or I'm gonna be a blogger or YouTube. Right. Like I didn't have that mindset. I just did it because I liked wrestling. And gradually it grew and like I think people saw that like, oh, one, he's really positive about the business. I'm not on there like dirt sheeting it, no disrespect to the dirt sheets or the news media sites, right? Like, but I wasn't out there giving you guys inside scoops, pay me $5 a month, I'll give you what's going on backstage. It was just like, check out this, look at that, do you guys remember this, check out this moment, oh, this was dope. Like it was just positive stuff, keeping people updated what was happening on Raw, SmackDown, etc. I didn't have any expectations, and I try to tell people this now that when they start like they want to get into the wrestling space, they want to start doing interviews, they want to start. I'm like, yo, don't have such crazy expectations.
Yeah,
like don't, because then you're expecting like this instant gratification that you're just not gonna get. I've had so many people that have reached out to me and want to do something and been like, well, why does this person pay attention to you and not me? Why does this person follow you, not me? Oh, why is it when you repost something I edited, you get more like likes on it than I do? Like, and it's like, well, don't you just want the person to see it so they know who you are? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think I didn't have any expectations. There was no goal. Eventually, goals started coming in. So eventually, like, I was like, okay, let's try to see if we can sell some t-shirts. Let's try to see if we can start doing interviews and podcasts. Started doing them with other Instagram people. Eventually had MJF on because we became friends at the time. And then like, I got the Bollywood boys on and a couple of local wrestlers on. Like, and I was slowly like trying to, then I was really start and stop. Started a handful of different podcasts. But I think there was no goal at the beginning, man. There wasn't. I had no like there was no like I want to hit 100K, I want to hit 50K. Like it just, I think because I went in it without it wanting anything like that, that's why it came to me easier, because I got to work with love rather than working with intent of like I want this or I need this,
Yeah, I mean, that's a powerful quote that you just said right there. And I think more people need to hear that too, who go into stuff and stress when their video doesn't get a certain amount of views here or there. And must be really cool for you too. I mean, I can speak firsthand that when I did get that follow from you, a few months ago or something like that, did mean something to me, because I've seen your page, the growth and everything, and you're almost like, to me, and I'm sure to others, a badge of honor. Like you're doing something right, that we showed up on your For You page, whatever, on Instagram, and that you somehow found us and hit that follow. And I see you do that for a lot of other rising people in the industry too.
Well, thank you. I really do. I try, right? Like I'm a big share the wealth, right? Like, and pay it forward. And good things happen to good people and try to do good and try to help other people out. I wouldn't be in a lot of the positions or get the opportunities I have if people didn't give me an opportunity or point me out or talk about me in rooms where I should be talked about. You know, and I see it now, right? And I don't take credit for anybody's hard work, but I take a little bit of like, I kind of am one of those people. I hope for other people, they're like, and it could sound like a negative thing, but like I want them to feel this way, like, oh, if he can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, if Justin can interview Ric Flair, then somehow I can figure out a way to go interview Ric Flair, right? Because I look at people that are like bigger than me, right? Like who are more professionally like take a Chris Van Vliet, for example, right? Chris is the man. Dope dude.
So
but when Chris is knocking out interviews and stuff, I look at Chris and I'm like, well, he has a background in broadcasting. Like, this is what he does for a living. Obviously, he's gonna knock out the park. I don't have that. So I can't compare myself to Chris. I don't look at Chris and say, well, Chris got this person. How can I get them? Because I think Chris is in a different league of his own. He's like professional. I'm this guy that came out of nowhere, has no ties to broadcasting, should never have been considered an interviewer, should never have been considered an influencer, should never have been considered, like, if I didn't have this wrestling Instagram page, I don't even think I would have social media. Like, I'm so out of my element of someone that like made something out of nothing and did not have a plan. Because like there's so many people that like had a, you know, like they started, like Chris was doing interviews in pop culture and entertainment,
right,
and then decided, hey, I love wrestling, I want to try to still kind of sneak in wrestling interviews in here, until it gradually blew up because he knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to do wrestling interviews. He wanted to be a wrestler at one point. I didn't want any of that. I knew in my life that at some point I wanted to do something with wrestling. I didn't know how to do it. So if I was able to create, I remember I was at a AEW event and I was with everybody after a show at the hotel and we're hanging out, and someone that works at AEW that I think very highly of, he works backstage, he's not a TV person or whatever, supported my page for years, didn't even know till recently. And I introduced myself to him, and like, he's like, you know what's so cool about you is like you created something out of nothing. Like, it just like you created something that became this big thing out of nothing. And I'm like, I did not have any wrestling background. I'm not a broadcast journalist. I have a marketing degree, but it had nothing to do with wrestling.
Yeah.
I created this whole thing out of nothing. I created an Instagram page, and now I create all these connections and network connections and moments and opportunities. And I walk into rooms that I don't think I belong in. I'm hanging out with people I don't think I should be hanging out with. But like, I put myself in that space. And that's why I'm like, okay, if you can't look at certain people because you know they do this professionally, and you don't want to be like, why? I know why they're doing it, because they can do it. Look at me, because there's no reason why I should be doing this. So like,
yeah,
I want people to look at me and be like, oh, if he's doing it, I can do it too. Because you can, like, you really can. It's just, you just gotta move with love and like passion and authenticity. I think people can tell when you're not authentic, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
No, that's, I mean, a perfect role model for someone looking to, yeah, start from nothing, no background. I mean, that's awesome. That's really cool what you've created. I want to take you back to that moment. So you've deleted your personal Instagram, you're creating a new Instagram. I think the relationship you said was over with your ex-girlfriend. What made you name it, or whenever it was you were out with the relationship, but what made you name it the Wrestling Classic?
I was watching it. I shouldn't say that. I was watching it on the network. There was no thought process behind this whole thing, bro. I was literally watching it on the network eating. And I was like, I'm gonna make a wrestling page. What would be a cool name? I'm like, oh, the Wrestling Classic would be a cool name. And to me, like, it was nothing I was like tied to, you know? It was nothing where I was like, I didn't know it was, like I said, I had no idea it was gonna become a thing. One day someone called me Classic, and I'm like, oh, that's so weird. And
That's like your name. Yeah, it's like your
and then I interviewed someone else, and I'm like, and he's a wrestler, and he's like, you know, like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, people just started calling me Classic, and I didn't even know how to react. Like, dude, you know how cool it is that you just get a nickname like that? Like, someone just, I'm like, oh, I guess that is pretty cool. Like, you know, like, and then people out here calling me Classic or TWC or Yo Wrestling Classic. And I'm like, oh, that's like a thing now.
Yeah.
So I'm like, even if like it ever goes away or something ever happens or whatever, like, you know, I'm like, you can't take it away. You can't separate us now. Like, it's a thing. It's been a year. So like, Yeah, there was no thought process behind it. I was literally just watching it, and the 1985 pay-per-view event WWF. I was on the network, like I said. I illegally got the network in Canada before it dropped here. And I was watching it, and I made an Instagram page. I'm like, what should I name it? And obviously, to be fair, like I thought initially most of it was gonna be about like 80s, 90s, early 2000s wrestling. Like that was like that's what it's gonna be about. Like I have all these pictures of like the 80s, 90s, and even back to like the 60s and 70s. So I was like, okay, well, there was already a page called Classic Wrestling. There was some other pages and whatnot. I was like, well, the Wrestling Classic, like
Wrestling
that's
Classic, yeah.
cool, you know? And obviously it didn't become that. It became a mix of everything. It was around WrestleMania 30. So next thing you know, I was posting about Brian and the Shield because wrestling was getting kind of cool at the time again, anyways, pipe bomb forward. But yeah, there was no thought process behind it. It was what I was watching.
No, I totally. That's very cool. I wanted to know, what is the first wrestler that actually gave you that endorsement? Do you remember the first wrestler that followed and you were like, wow, this is so cool?
Man, I feel like there was a lot of cool ones that followed really early on that like I might not have given enough. Like I don't know when like say a Shane Helms followed me, but I feel
Right.
like it was very early. But I know for a fact that like when like so I have this theory, right? And this will make a lot of what I post on my page make a lot of sense. That as much as Instagram, everybody's on it, the women tend to use it more than the guys.
Okay.
So like the women wrestlers tend to be on Instagram more than like say Sheamus or Bret Hart or like you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
the Roman Reigns, like the Charlottes, Natties, Carmelas of the world are on Instagram. It's
Very
you know
active.
they're more active than any of the men would be. So that's why I specifically remember like when Summer Rae first followed because she followed like really early on. Now me and her like super close, you know, when
Oh,
like
cool.
Natty and Charlotte first followed. Um, you know, obviously Brett was a huge one, but I used to like, you know, even till this day, I'm always kind of iffy of like when one of the more senior wrestlers follow my page, legendary wrestlers. I'm like, are they actually running the page or is someone running their page?
Yeah.
But when it's the current active ones, it's super cool. And I remember a lot of the girls followed very early on. And then a lot of the guys too, but it was just like it was like Kevin Nash followed me for a bit. I got blocked by him. That's a whole different story. But but like Kevin Nash followed me, and that was cool because I knew he was actually kind of active on his because like you could tell by his
Yeah.
captions and whatnot. But the Scott Hall followed me, but I don't know if it was the real Scott Hall. And then I talked to him when I met him, and that was like the one thing I remember. We were all hanging out. It was all in weekend in Chicago, and we were all just I don't know why we were always all like it was like just me and a bunch of like Mega Ran and like the like not wrestlers but like fans and like some independent wrestlers. We'd all hang out downstairs just drinking in the lobby till like 2-3 a.m. And Scott Hall came down. I'm like, hey, I'm like, I don't want to bother him. Like, I don't want to be that mark that like runs up to him. I was like, hey, let's take a picture. So I'm like, so let him do his thing. He's going to the front desk, yada yada yada. But then something inside of me just was like, still like, sitting there, did not like. I'm like, I'm not gonna call him over here or nothing. But I was like, have a good night, Scott. And then he kind of like turned to us and he was like, you guys have a good night too. He's like, what are you guys doing down here? And then like walked over, right? And then he didn't drink or nothing. I can vouch for that. But he hung out with us and maybe partaked in some other activity. But then everyone was kind of hanging around, mingling and stuff. And Penelope Ford was down there, and her and Joey at the time were talking to Scott. And I kind of walked up, and Penelope's like, "Oh no, he's cool. He's like one of us," which was like the coolest little nice endorsement for her to say that because
Oh,
she didn't.
absolutely. Yeah.
But like we were already cool with each other, so because you know I'm just approaching Scott. I was like, "Yeah, I just want to ask a question," but she's like, "No," she's like, "No, he's cool. He's like one of us." And then I was just like, "Hey, Scott, I have to ask you a question." I'm like, "There was this page on Instagram called Scott Hall NWO or something that followed me back there." I'm like, "Is that you?" He's like, "No." He's like, "I'm like, it's verified and everything." He's like, "I know they think it's me, but it's not me." But he's like, "I didn't mind the guy running it because like I thought it was funny." But then he started posting like naked girls and stuff, and I had to be like, "That's not me" and stuff. "Oh, that was crazy." But yeah, so that's a Scott Hall story. But he was super cool.
That's so awesome.
But yeah, like there's a lot of wrestlers at the beginning that followed that was kind of just like, oh, like that's insane. And it just kept happening, right? Like at one point, like I was just growing like 2,000 to 3,000 followers a day. Granted, this was 2014. Instagram was just pictures. This was before the 15-second videos. This is before the stories. This is before all that stuff. So it was a smaller space. It was also the period where, like, I don't know if you remember on Instagram, there was that section where they would show what everybody liked and when
Oh, of course. That got a lot of people in trouble sometimes.
it got people in trouble, but it also put me on so hard because I think other wrestlers would be like, oh, this wrestler's liking this stuff. This wrestler's liking that stuff. Some guys like Jinder and Sheamus and I didn't know back then. Like, this is what I mean. Here's a perfect example. I didn't know back then. Back then, guys like Otis and Dax Harwood, when they were in the performance center, they followed me because I went. I had to go back and archive and delete a whole bunch of posts after I lost my page and got it back. And I'm looking through the comments. I'm like, wait, comments from Otis or comments from like Dax Harwood back in like 2015, but I didn't know who they were, right?
That's
like,
crazy.
oh, I don't even know what wrestlers were following me before I knew they were even following me because I didn't know who they were at that time. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I feel like that's something really unique to the wrestling business too, with how we see people grow. Also, from like nothing, you'll see somebody wrestling in front of 30 people at a really fun indie show, but then 5-6 years later, they're in the Performance Center, NXT, main roster, whatever it may be.
100%. That's like what happened with me and Carmelo Hayes when I first met him last year at WrestleMania. And I was like, "You're the man." He's like, "No, you're the man." He's like, "No, you're." I'm like, he's like, "Dude," he's like, "I followed you forever," and I didn't realize like, oh, this guy's been following me since he was on the Independents. I just didn't know. And I try really hard to follow every independent wrestler that follows me. That's what everyone's like, why do you follow some people? Because I'm like, if I can give back, I want to. So I try to follow like obviously the people I want to follow. So those like actors and actresses and models and whatnot. But then I'm like, and friends and family. But then I'm like, I also want to follow other creators and other people in the wrestling space and wrestlers, right? If I can, especially if they're already following me, then I want to follow them back,
right?
And try to help them out when I can, or like show if I can show love to them, I can. So it was crazy to know. Like, he's like, no, I followed you for years and I had no idea. Like, and now he's like Carmelo Hayes, and I'm like a fan and didn't even know. So it's like, yeah.
Well, someone I'm sure you definitely noticed when they followed The Rock. When did that happen? Take us to that day, you seeing the notification and actually what happened.
So that was definitely during the period where that page existed, where people could see who did what and their activity, because people started hitting me up and like, yo, The Rock followed you and stuff. So cool. He was super nice. He used to comment frequently. I think the thing about The Rock, because he's followed not a lot, like probably like you can count them on my fingers, a handful of wrestling pages that posted classic wrestling. I don't think he likes to stick around when it's not just classic wrestling anymore. I don't think he cares about the new stuff. He just really liked it when I used to post classic wrestling stuff, the old pictures, the old videos. I remember posting a video of Roddy Piper versus his dad, and he was actually in the crowd, and he wrote like a big comment about that match and his memories. And I posted something about him and Vince, and he gave this whole backstory about him and Vince and their relationship, and he was very active for a minute there. But he loves the classic wrestling stuff, right? So the coolest thing about me about the Rock stuff is that's one of the examples I love giving when I'm like, there's been times where I was like, what am I doing with this page? Because I mean, I'm gonna be completely transparent. There was a lot of years it didn't make me any money at all. I was just doing it for fun. I was still working my job, and it was like this thing I was doing on the side for fun and seeing what I could do with it. That I was like, why am I still doing this? Like, I was getting in trouble with my ex-girlfriend. Like, it was just, I was so consumed by it and obsessed with like wanting to like connect with this audience and keep giving them content. Like, I was obsessed with wanting to keep giving them content, and like the amount of time, I don't think people understand, like the amount of time I would take to take a video and edit it down to like, I take like a 25-minute match, 30-minute match, and editing it down to 10 minutes or a minute in highlights just to post on their Facebook, or like sit there and have to like screen record a whole like 20-minute segment from the network just to cut it down. Like, no one actually understands the work I put in to make this stuff work, the editing I did to make this stuff work, for no reason other than I liked wrestling. You know what I mean?
Passion
no reason other than I just love this business and I wanted people to tune in and be excited by it and start conversations with it, right? That's all it was. And so when things like The Rock followed me, it made it make more sense. It made me want to keep grinding and see where this can go. And I think there's been so many little moments where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with this anymore. Like, I don't know, like I don't know what you're gonna ask me next, but like there was a period where I lost the page. I don't know if you were aware of that.
I wasn't. No.
Yeah, let me tell you this. Okay,
Okay.
so in 2020, I started doing interviews. I got stuck in Vancouver, right? So so 2016, started taking stuff seriously. Went to WrestleMania in Dallas, saw people wearing wrestling classic shirts. Wouldn't take pictures with people. Hidden identity, Batman, Bruce Wayne. And I remember I asked someone that was rocking my shirt, "Yo, can I take a picture with you?" I'm like, "No, but can I take a picture of you rocking the shirt?" He's like, "Dude, a lot of people in there are asking about you." I'm like, "Who?" He's like, "Just like a bunch of wrestlers and people, like random people that thought I was you." And I was like, "Oh, I need to start owning this." So slowly with just my hair and half my face, was slowly putting myself out there. And people have heard my voice because I did interviews, but they never seen what I look like. I think it helped me a lot at the beginning because
Right.
nobody ever like attacked me with ageism. Like, how does this person that was only born in the 90s know so much about the 60s? They never knew how old I was.
Right.
So at the beginning, I think it helped me quite a bit. It just showed that I was super knowledgeable, even though I was not alive for some of the stuff that I loved. Which is totally normal and okay. I
Yeah.
remember having these conversations with Max back in the day where because he loved like old school wrestling, like he loved Tully Blanchard, Jim Crockett, Memphis, Mid South wrestling. He loved Piper and Tully and that era, Gino Hernandez. But I'm like, oh, but people probably will act like you don't know that stuff because you're young. It's like, no, if you're a student of the game and you love this, you're gonna know that stuff and you'll be pretty knowledgeable about it and you'll go back and watch it. But anyways, so 2016, I put myself out there. 2017, 18 was just me going hard, networking, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, going to events, showing up, being at WrestleMania weekends in 2018, moved to California in 2018, 2019, a little bit of a struggle, but 2020, world shut down, got stuck in Vancouver, didn't know what to do. Was like, you know what? I'm gonna start doing these interviews. I'm gonna interview people I've met over the past few years, and I'm just have conversations with them. Right? Started doing this thing, the whole casual conversation situation. Guys, if you have YouTube, subscribe to me on YouTube, The Wrestling Classic. Check out TWC Show wherever you listen to podcasts. I've done almost 100 episodes now since
Nice.
20.
Congratulations. That's huge.
I have 97 in the bag. I just got 98 in the bag. I just got to do 2 more, and then we're at 100. Started with a bunch of different people. It was first my friend Nick, and then I had like RJ City guys on for a roundtable in the second episode, and which is crazy because now people see RJ City every week. But
Oh yeah, pre-show, right? Pre-show, does all that
yeah,
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
and then like episode 3, like I had Shad Gasper on, and me and Shad kind of
Oh
spawned
wow.
our own podcast, and he was unlocked. He's like, let's do this every week. We did 4 episodes, and then he passed away, which was like just so crazy. So that was one thing that was like, like I wanted to stop. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, this is crazy. um and then on July 7th, they took down my Instagram page for WWE and AEW. Both sides put claims on the account. From WWE, it was like an attack. I know who did it. They didn't like me, I figured, and whatever. AEW was more of a, they said I could post stuff, but it was a new company and they weren't sure how like it was gonna be like, and then videos started getting taken down. They're like, "Oh crap, our bad. Like, we'll help you fix that."
Yeah.
And they did. Look, fairly quick once I got the claim numbers. And WWE, like, I got a lot of people that I know that work back there, and also like the social media team and stuff. So they help me get it back to, because they get it. They're like, you're positive and you're a good person to have in the community. Like, I don't know, like, we'll help you get it back. Just don't post videos. So that's why I wasn't allowed to post videos anymore. So all those like
Okay.
matches and promos and stuff I used to post for so many years that helped the page grow, like, I'm not allowed to do that anymore. So when certain wrestlers and people unfollowed, I understood, because they were there to see like Stone Cold in the beer truck and Ric Flair promo, but I'm not allowed to post that anymore.
Right.
So I had to get creative, right? And there's still pages that do, and they get
No,
away
that's
with
why I'm
it.
so shocked by what you're talking about, because I feel like I see it every single day on
Yeah, like
yeah.
there's still pages that do and they get away with it. There's still people that now do like the Twitch stream and they react to the stuff and they get away with it. But I like at the time I feel like I fell so, and I think I'll get there in a second, but at the time I think I fell so hard under the radar, and I thought that was a good thing, but then I was like, I fell way too hard on the radar that it wasn't a good thing.
Yeah.
And two, at the time, like right now in this very particular moment, I'd say in the last year and a half, and I'm gonna give a lot of credit to AEW for it being this way. Content creators through social media are accepted a lot more than they were 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. When I used to try to apply for stuff 4, 5, 6 years, like, what do you mean he's an Instagram page? Like, how is that going to benefit us? Oh, he's an influencer. influencer. We work with radio and TV and like reputable sources. You know, we want to work with Forbes and ESPN, and you know, we don't want to work with a YouTuber or an Instagrammer. Now Logan Paul's in the ring. Now every day is full of Twitch streamers and content creators and influencers. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's changed for the better. But I've just been here long enough to feel the backlash before it changed. Because even now, I walk in the rooms and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so great to see us!" Like you guys have known me for like years. Like you're just now letting me in, and I think this was AEW did that first. AEW let like content creators and people into their scrums and their media stuff first, and kind of really embraced the internet journalists, wrestling media in a way that WWE didn't for years. And I think now with this new regime, WWE's finally like, all right, okay, we got some content creators. They have large reaches. They have a large reach on Instagram. They have a large reach on Twitch. They have a big YouTube. Like, let's work with these people. But at the time, that wasn't the case. And the person that helped take my page down back then no longer works at WWE. So that's when I'm saying there's like a new regime. There's like a fully new regime.
Fully new. Wow.
The regime didn't believe in Instagram. I was on the phone with the guy. Three-way phone call with him and another wrestler that was pushing for me to be at Media Row. He just did not get it. You either had to be on radio, like Cyrus or Busted Open or some crazy radio station. You had to be on TV, Good Morning, or you had to be like Forbes or some crazy publication for them to want to F with you. Otherwise, oh, what do you mean? Oh, you want this Instagram page to come here and do interviews? Like what? Like it wasn't a thing. Now you look and like, I remember I finally got media for WWE this January. They were Rumble for the first time ever. Never got it for all these years. And I went there and I was like, dude, I felt like, man, it's gonna be so weird. I'm gonna walk in there, like it's gonna be like high school again. Everyone's gonna be like competitive or something. Like, I don't know the space. And I walked in there and everyone was so cool. And it was all people that were like, no, dude, like we followed you for years. Like, yo, do you mind if I get a selfie with you? And I'm like, oh, like,
dude, wow.
I'm the old guy here. I'm like the old guy that's been doing this for so long, but also like, oh, some of these people followed me when they were like 15, 16 years old, and now they're 25, 26 doing this stuff themselves. That's cool.
Yeah.
And they looked at me being like, if this jabroni can do it, then I can too. Right? So like,
yeah.
So it was cool. But anyways, fast forward, I got the page back and then I didn't know what to do. Right. So I was like, okay, well, do I want to do interviews still? Because like it's weird after Shad passed away, even doing them. And like, you know, I got the ball rolling and then I just stopped from like June, July, August, September, October, November. I just stopped doing them for like 6-7 months. So that's like a big stop. And then I was like, Renee Paquette left WWE and I hit her up because we were always cool. And I always kind of wanted to interview her, but I couldn't because she worked for WWE and they would never give me anything at that time. And I was like, hey, you just left WWE. Like, would you want to like come on the show for an interview? If I did, hell yeah, like, well, let's do it. And that got the ball rolling. And then we just kept doing it. So I'm like, there's always moments, right? Like if she said no, like who knows? Maybe I wouldn't have done interviews still, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So like things like that. I remember, and then like I was like, I only want to interview people I know. And I kept interviewing all people I kind of had a prior relationship to. And then one day someone emailed me like, hey, would you like to interview Eric Bischoff? I'm like, well, I don't really know Eric Bischoff, but I'll do it. And then that like gave me the courage to interview people I don't really know. And like, and then it's like, oh, I'm doing all these interviews, but nothing's really happening. I don't see any growth in my like, what's the next step for me in this space? Like, do people even give an F about me, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah. And then MJF gives me a shout out on TV, and I'm like, oh, and my phone's blowing up. Yeah. That's immediately too. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, like so going back just really quickly, went all the way back to the Rock thing. That was one of the first moments I had one of those. Oh, there's something here, but it's constantly been happening. Every time I think I'm going to stop doing this, something happens.
That is awesome. First of all, you just took us on a great journey.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I talk so much.
That was so cool.
I hate doing these. I talk so much.
It was incredible though. Like I was following along, seeing that minds were actually opened and that you've been along for this journey of like the business changing their method on things is really cool. And now you get to stand at arguably one of the most popular times in wrestling ever right now on top. Like you are one of the main forces, and it's
I don't think that, but I appreciate
no, that's fine. And of course you
dealt with so much that I don't look at myself that way because I've got to know so many times. Yeah. And I always try to remind, like sometimes like I don't know, like maybe I don't know if you tried, but like a lot of people now like they will try to apply for Media Row.
I'm
Uh,
trying. I'm
yeah, there you
trying.
go. Or like, and then like some people got it at WrestleMania, and there was like, well, they did it really weird. Like I went to the Rumble and they did it like really because they are actually accepting a lot more people, so which is a good thing on their part, right?
That's good.
WWE's doing a great job of trying to include people, but like at the Rumble, they invited too many people that only certain people got to go to the press junket after the show,
Oh,
and the
okay.
rest of the people didn't, and they figured out a way to separate it. I never got to go. I was not offended. I actually don't like being in those all the time, to be honest. But so I was like, oh, like okay, that's fine. And then the same thing kind of happened at WrestleMania, where it's like, well, a lot of people got accepted for media, but only selective people got accepted for the actual press junket where you get to go around and do the interviews. And I really wanted to do that. And luckily I was accepted for it. But I didn't realize a lot of people didn't get, like, it was really picky or choosy. Like they had to differentiate who was going to be able to go and who wasn't going to be able to go. And I always have to tell people, like, yo, like, it's okay. Like, you'll get it next time. I got rejected for 10 years. Like, you guys understand this? Like, I got no, maybe not 10. I think I started trying like in 2017 for WrestleMania 33. And every year since then, I've been rejected till now. Last year, I bought a $90 ticket in LA to sit on like this highest of high seats. Luckily, like because of the page, a bunch of people like were like, "What are you're here? What the hell? Like, come hang out in our box." And I got to go hang out in a box for the next night, for that night and the whole next night. But it was like people don't see, like, I am someone that created this really cool thing, and one of the top OG Instagram wrestling influencers for sure. Like I'm not maybe the Twitter guy or the YouTube guy, but I'm definitely the Instagram guy.
Definitely.
And even me, I still don't get some of the opportunities that I think I deserve. But I'm not sad about it. I'm not upset about it because I know they'll come if I just keep grinding. And it goes back to the very beginning where I didn't do this with any expectations. I'm not looking for any instant gratification. I'm doing it because I love wrestling, and hopefully something will happen. Like,
So many people need to hear, I think, what you just said too, just for their own confidence. Like that's huge.
Like you just be hopeful and be patient because everyone wants things to happen right away.
Oh yeah.
Like, yo, I started the fan page for this wrestler. Why doesn't this wrestler support me? Well, are you harassing them to follow you, or are you just posting them enough where they show that like you are a fan of them? And you know what I mean? Like,
yes. You
I know
gotta
even
just
I can
wait.
get annoying. I think there's a wrestler that told my buddy one time, "Oh, I love that page. He's great, but man, he tags me every week in those Maestro Classic posts." I'm like, crap. He's like, I have to mute him. And I'm like, I get that. But it's just like I always try to tell people, like, you have to like don't do it for the wrong reasons. Don't do it because we're in a generation now, right? Like a kid will graduate high school, and to be a content creator and influencer is an actual job.
Yeah.
It's an actual thing you can consider. And that's dope. But it's also a lot of pressure on you. Because it is like self-employed. You gotta grind and make something out of it. Maybe work another job while you're doing it, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, for me, my experience is so different with it because it wasn't a consideration. It kind of was like YouTubers and stuff were like a thing. Like the Vine stars were popping off in
Right.
2014, but like there was no blueprint. There was no like should I be doing interviews? Should I be sliding in people's DMs? Like I remember my ex before we broke up when I was going to WrestleMania 32 in 2016. This is the year we broke up, but like we're still dating by WrestleMania. She gave me like a care package before I went on my trip, because now she found out and she's trying to embrace it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
there's the Gary V book in there. And I'm like, I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm like the biggest Gary V fan or anything like that. But I was like, this guy knows something about something, obviously, right? So, and I read it, and he was just like sliding people's DMs. Who cares?
Right.
And then I actually took that, and I was like, I'm just gonna slide it. If they open up, they open. If they don't, who cares? That's the other thing. I don't know. Maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. I don't know about the younger generation. I have like zero F's about rejection. Like I don't care about being rejected. It doesn't, like, obviously it hurts, like I want things, but I'm like, I can bounce back pretty quick. I don't think I'm entitled to anything.
Yeah.
Ace Steel said it recently on an interview when I had Ace Steel on. And I think about every once in a while when I get kind of annoyed, he's like, wrestling owes none of us nothing. And I'm like, that's true. Like, it really does owe us nothing.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we even get to do what we get to do and have fun with it and talk to cool people, like, you should just appreciate the small things, man. Because it'll all add up, and everyone recognizes it. And the one thing I also want to say that I've told a couple of people recently is like, even if you think nobody's watching you, they're watching you.
Mm-hmm.
There's eyes on you. If you're on the internet doing stuff, they're watching you. They can see.
Somebody. No, that's so
Somebody,
true. And
yeah.
I think a lot of things sometimes when I think about, like, I've been doing the show for 4 years now, and I've got about 80 episodes now, which I'm very like thankful about. But if I went back and told myself, who was 10 years old watching wrestling, that fast forward 15 years, you're going to be sitting for an hour in a private internet room with, I don't know, someone, anyone I was watching on TV, I wouldn't have believed it. And I think a lot of, my fellow podcasters, if anyone gets discouraged about getting 5 years in an interview, just like you just said, remember those small things, that you're actually sitting there with someone so cool, one-on-one. Like, who cares if anyone watches or not, right? Like, just
100%. Who
Yeah.
cares if you watch? Who cares if you're not getting as many views as the other person? Who cares if you're not getting the same interviews as other people? Just stay in your lane, focus yourself, don't compare yourself to. That's a big social media problem, is we start comparing ourselves with other people, right?
Yeah.
Or we pick someone. I remember I did talk to someone, they're like, I want to be like this person. That's my goal.
Right.
I'm like, you shouldn't want to be like any person. Like part of your own lane, your own fan base and your own audience. I mean, to an extent, right? Like, you can want to aspire to be like a person because you grew up watching them and you like what they do. Like, hey, I want to be like Johnny Carson. Like, sure, right? Like, I want to be like David Letterman or Jay Leno. Like, sure, dope, right? Like, you can aspire to be that at someone that's an OG in the game. Like, but if you want to be like someone that's also actively doing it right now, like, don't want to be like that person. Carve your own lane, be your own person, and like pick a role model from someone that's like already done it and gone or something.
Like, I know, seriously. No, I mean, you're preaching.
Yeah, because then you start comparing yourself to even that person you want to be like, because you're like, oh well, now they're doing this, and I'm like, it's like, don't do that. Like, get to your spot. And a lot of people don't realize a lot of other people's. Like, I hope people will listen to this just so they can understand. It's more than what you take on face value, right? Like, people see your success, and like he's the man, he killed it. Like, oh, that's so dope, without knowing all the stuff you did to get there.
Yes.
They're
so used to the final product.
Yeah, like I always say, everyone's, oh, The Rock's a huge Hollywood star, most paid in the world, yada yada yada. But I was like, yeah, what was happening from like 2003 to like 2013 when like he was struggling in Hollywood and nobody knew what the hell was going on?
Look, I loved Race to Witch Mountain.
We just blank out those years.
I loved Race to Witch Mountain. One of my favorite.
And he was putting out movies, but he wasn't the big star he eventually
exactly became.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
yes,
someone, there's probably 100%, and that it's a little bit less now because of the internet and social media, and you can find stuff. But I'm like, I don't think some people realize how long some of these wrestlers have been wrestling for.
Not at all.
Like, I don't think some people realize, like, oh, like, you might be an AJ Styles fan, but he's been doing this since 2002, but he's probably your worst example because TNA was popular. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, Kevin Steen or El Generico, Zayn, like, you don't, like, you just see what they're doing now, and you're like, oh, I want to do that. Like, some people probably love Dakota Kai right now. How long she's been doing this for? Where she's been wrestling? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
no, it's great. Their journeys are insane. Somebody you mentioned that you have a good friendship with over the years is MJF, and you mentioned it earlier. I'd love to ask you, when he mentioned you on AEW TV, I was watching. I remember he said there's a page on Instagram, the Wrestling Classic, live on AEW. What did that mean to you?
I don't expect anybody to do anything for me to give me flowers back or anything like that. That's not, like, once again, zero. I've learned, right? And this is something I learned as I grew older. I wasn't always like this. I'm not trying to preach like I'm some like, oh, I'm holier than now. And I know I learned just to have gratitude for everything. And I have zero expectations. I learned in life, if I just like keep my expectations low, even the little things that go exceed expectations are amazing. So like, I don't go into anything with high expectations. I don't expect anyone to pay me back for anything that I do. I don't do anybody a favor hoping they're going to do something back for me, right? I hope they'll like a human. Like, I really hope they remember that I went out of my way and I helped them out at one point in their life. Yeah. But I don't expect them to like try to get me a job or do anything special for me or whatever. Like, I don't, right? Like, at the end of the day, when I die one day, and if you hear about me dying, you sit there for a second and you go, man, like, damn, that guy did help me out a lot at one point. As long as you remember that, that's all I need from you. That's my only expectation. But I don't need you to do anything. I don't need you to show it. I don't need you to write it in a book. Like, I don't need any of that type of situation. But I appreciate it. And and so I'm gonna be like, honestly, like when Max was one of those people, and this is something that's really cool to me now. And I feel like I still do it today without really knowing them doing it, because I don't know where some of these people will be like 10 years from now. But Max was one of the first people that made my page seem like it was something that more, because I am my own biggest enemy and my own biggest critic, and I got the worst case of imposter. I'm like, I don't think I'm special. I don't even know why you want me on your show. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the type of person I am. And I'm actually like this isn't just me being modest or he's being humble to be nice. Like, with my real life and all the chaos happening in my real life, that it's hard for me to be cocky in this Instagram life. Like, like, it brings me down to reality, right? Like, it knocks me down a peg. And as much as, like, so many people in the industry like, no, you're him, like, own it, or like, you're the man, like, don't forget that, like, push for what you want. I try to remember those things, so I don't think I'm those things. And anytime someone makes me feel that way, it's dope. And I've had, once again, many experiences like that. Rock following me, me having a weird DM Instagram friendship with The Weeknd. Like, never paid for a Weeknd concert the last 2 times he came to Vancouver. Like, there's a lot of wrestlers that I've talked to and had personal conversations with where I'm like, grew up watching you and I was like your biggest fan, and now we're like internet friends. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and like there's just been really cool things that have happened. Like, when I first snuck in a wall, Sean Mooney helped me sneak in a Wall of Mania in the VIP section, and nobody kicked me out. And I was hammered, and I was taking shots with Liv Morgan and Marty Scroll guys. And I remember I asked Kaz and Emilio, I'm like, yo, why didn't anybody kick me out? Like, I was like on stage dancing and shit with
Which
Wall.
one was this?
2018. And
Okay.
they're like, because everybody knows who you are, Justin. And it doesn't click in my head. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we all fuck with you. We all follow your page. Like, why would we kick you out? I was like, I just cause I snuck in here. Like, I didn't pay for ticket. Like, I wasn't even invited back here. I just got to, like, so it's like, when those moments happen, it's cool. Max is one of the first people that he followed the page. He wasn't wrestling yet. And he would hit me up all the time and be like, oh, I love this post. Oh, that Piper one was dope, yada yada yada. And he did leave a comment on my page where he's like, a really bad grammar, but he's talked about his learning issues on TV. The thing about Max that is so fucking, like, I think is so cool about him is, I mean, we all know he's playing a character, and he is playing a character, because I know Max to an extent. I'm not gonna act like I know him that well, but like, because we have drifted and we've grown and whatnot. But every time we see each other, it's like dope. But he's playing a character, but so much of his character has his reality ingrained in it. Like, he is like oh, I had a learning disability growing up. That's true. Oh, I was an acapella and I like acting and all that stuff. That's true. I've been a wrestling fan since a little kid. That's true. I was a big CM Punk fan. That's true. I was a big Brian. All this, it's a character, but there's so much true about it too. He's kids threw nickels at him. He got bullied. That's true.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, him getting in a car accident with a girl named Liv. That's not true. But, but like, there's certain things I'm like, oh, and knowing him as much as I know him, I don't know. I'm not gonna, once again, I'm not gonna sit and act like we're the bestest of friends, but
Right.
we're friends. And knowing him the way that I do know him, I know that a lot of the stuff is true. I'm actually still really tight with his dad, to be honest.
Okay, that's
his
cool.
dad talk all the time regularly still. When I go to shows and I see his family knows who I am.
I love that.
Yeah, so you know what I mean? Because the story is true, right? Because the story is true. So he commented on my page, and I have the screenshot of the comment. It's on the tag post. Actually, I want to repost that video of him giving the shout out with all the other slides there, but I just haven't had the time to like do that, because I don't know. I feel like that's a little, like, I don't know. It's personal, but then I was like, it's so cool that I want to leave it there. But
Yeah.
There's a comment there from 2015 where he's like, one day I'm gonna, I'm in my dorm room. You had the scholarship. I was on your page. I was scrolling, and I drove home and I told my dad I want to be a wrestler. That's a true story. He was on my page, scrolling, watching a promo, drove home and told his dad he wanted to be a wrestler. That's why I still have a relationship with his dad, because his dad knows me as the catalyst of his son dropping out of school and being like, I'm going to be a wrestler. Like, and no matter what, like, as much as we can drift, as much as we don't talk as much as we used to talk, and we're like, we still have each other's phone numbers, we'll hit each other up with happy birthdays and what chit chat here and there. I'll congratulate him with every big thing he does. I just mean, like, we don't talk every day or anything like we used to, right? So like, as much as that happens, like, I'm always gonna be the catalyst of the Instagram page that he was on when he drove home and told his dad he wanted to be a wrestler.
That is mind blowing. Like, that's crazy.
So like, and then I don't be wrong, in the moment, so he did start training, and then we did talk all the time in those years, like 2015, 16, 17, 18, even when he all in, like, we would talk quite a bit all the time. He was sending me his promos to watch and give him feedback. Hey, do you mind sharing it? Hey, do you mind posting this on your page? Oh, I'm wrestling here. I remember one time he sent me a picture of him with Mick Foley, and he was so excited that he met Mick Foley. Like we were tight at one point. While he was training and working the indies and doing his thing. And I know we kind of drifted while he was working the indies too, because I'm like, oh, he did so much I didn't even know, you know, and that's on me too, right? But like, he started doing so much I didn't even know on the indies. And but we always were cool. And I remember being in Chicago at All In, and he snuck me into the after party to say what's up to him and shit. And because I was like, yo, that's so dope. I didn't even know you were coming out, and you came out, like, you know what I mean? Like, and we've been cool, right? And like, I just saw him last year in November at Full Gear, and that was the first time I've seen him since 2019 in person.
Oh my god! What? So
last year at Full Gear.
So what?
Don't get me wrong, like, what
do you say? 4 years?
Person.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen each other in person, like scrums and stuff. But he was always so in character, do his thing, and then he'd just dip, right? And then I just,
of course,
I'm not anyone that asks for favors. I'm like, hey, let me come backstage and say what's up or what, you know, like. So I'm like, so finally, he had a meet and greet thing, and friends like, do you want to go meet MJF at this meet and greet? And I was like, I'm like, I'll come. I'm like, I don't really go to meet and greets like that.
Yeah.
But, like, I knew for older wrestlers, like, I always go to WrestleCon and like that type of stuff. But I was like, I don't know, it feels weird. Like, I'm just gonna go to this meet and greet, right? And I went. I was like, I'm like, when am I gonna see this guy if I don't see him here? Like, I don't know if I'm here. Like, let's just go. And then his dad like came out, and his dad's like, why are you guys standing in line? Like, pulled us out the line and took us to the front and said what's up to him and stuff, and it was cool. And then he was the one that was like, yo, like, just stop like being so like nice, like, be disrespectful, ask questions, do crazy shit. And he he's younger than me by quite a few years, and he would always be like, yo, like, you should do more, like, you should be a manager, like, you should do stuff. Like, you'd always encourage that back then, and I don't forget it. So basically, I messaged him briefly prior to that whole situation when he did the shout out, and I just messaged him saying something like, just a reminder, I don't give a shit how famous you get. Like, you're always gonna be my bro, like my little bro, right? Like, just know that, right? And he's like, shout out incoming with a period. I didn't know what he meant. I thought like, oh, he's gonna shout me on his Instagram story or some shit,
Wow.
Like, that's all I assumed, right? I didn't know that he might have been sitting there writing a promo, figuring out what he was gonna say. I'm like, shout out incoming, like, okay. And then he did shout me on his story because I shared something he shared in his story. I'm like, well, I was part of the shout out. Like, oh, it's dope, like, good for, it's a good guy, right? Like, and then I was sitting exactly where I'm sitting right now, actually. And I was actually home for once, and I was watching TV, and he's doing his promo, and I'm so invested because I'm also like a big CM Punk fan. He's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and my boy's feuding CM Punk. This is so cool, like, and he said it, and I was like, oh, and he's telling the story. And when he's telling the story, I'm like, wait, I know this story. This is a true story. Once again, you have to know Max to know this is a true story. Like, for everyone else, it's a story they're hearing for the first time. But for everyone else, and was like, oh no, this is a story. He went to college. He had a football scholarship. He was really like people. He had a lot of like potential in that football situation, but he jumped in his truck and he drove home and he told his dad he wanted to be a wrestler. Like, it's the true story.
Yeah.
And it's also true that he was on my page. He said he saw the picture of CM Punk and Bryan Danielson shaking hands. I 100% sure he saw that on my page, and he shared it because there was an old Facebook page of him sharing that picture and saying that he made that decision. But I also specifically remember him saying, like, I also watched this like Roddy Piper promo that you posted, And then I saw this picture, and then I like drove home. I'm like, this guy wants to be a wrestler. Like, and so that, yeah, I popped. I thought it was the coolest thing, and I thought it was super nice of him to do. And it's shitty for him that I'm gonna run with it forever and use it for like, that's so fucking cool, because it's a one time I really got my flowers on TV, you know.
Yeah. I mean, no, and you really did. Like I remember hearing about it. I think I probably saw it and then I saw you repost it, of course, but a crazy moment. And I think it speaks to what you said, that AEW really did open up some minds and continues to open up minds and change minds about what can benefit this business in different ways.
No, and that's why I love AEW, because yeah, like listen, I consider too, and we can debate about their ability to tell good stories, and if they care
Right.
about in-ring wrestling more than they care about the actual like stories and characters they're building. We can talk about that for an hour, right? Like I have my opinions too, but I will always appreciate the business of the company existing, because it's opened so many opportunities for some people. There's so many people that on TV that might not have been on TV if it wasn't for AEW.
Yes.
It gave people like MJF his start. It's giving someone like my other friend Mariah May a platform to be on national television now. It's, you know, and I have so many other friends that work there and people that are supporters of my page or supported me so for so many years that work there, that it's cool. Like I'll never want that company to go out of business. I never want that company if I'm ever complaining about it, is that I wanted to do so good, so bad,
Yeah.
because I think it's so cool and what they've been able to create, and it is an alternative. And I might not enjoy it all the time, but I also don't enjoy WWE all the time. So, like it's the same thing for me, right? I just know at the end of the day, I love wrestling, and I love what wrestling's given me, and the opportunity that's opened for me, and that I was able to use something I loved since I was a child, something that was around me since I was born, because my brother's 10 years older than me and he was a Hulkamaniac. So I had all the action figures and the magazines and VHS tapes of like 80s and 90s wrestling that I would watch, WCW and WWF. And it's not like, I'm not unaware of the fact that I took something that I loved so much for so long and got to make something cool out of it. I will love wrestling forever, so I want AEW to do good. And someone even specifically hit me up after that MJF promo from the other company and was like, dude, if we could just like, they're like, yo, like if we had more reign over our promos, you get shouted out all the time.
Oh,
And I'm like,
that's even cooler. Wow.
that's so nice. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's just
like,
yeah,
obviously at
exactly.
AEW, like I'm sure MJF didn't, like, you know, he cut his promo when he said it. Like nobody knew he was gonna say it. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe one or two people, like, and then even that, like him doing that opened so many more doors, because there's probably a bunch of other people and they're like, oh yeah, I know that guy too.
Yeah.
You know, and then my phone blew up with a bunch of people that I don't talk to all the time, but they're cool people, like, yo, and I'm like, yeah, that's crazy. Like, what? Like,
Oh my
yeah.
God. It's really, I mean, your journey has been so cool. You've dropped some gems in this interview. Thank you so much. I'm gonna ask you.
I feel like I talked the whole time. I'm so sorry.
No, you didn't. No, you said some, first of all, inspirational stuff, great stories. My last question, it's a superlative, but I want to hear, what advice would you give to your younger self just starting? I know you said you didn't have goals back then, but seeing everything you've accomplished, if you could go back and tell that younger Justin something who was just starting the page, what would it be?
I just had this conversation with a wrestler yesterday. She's wrestling in Japan right now, and she's like 21 or 22 years old. And I was like, you know, if I could go back and talk to 23-year-old Justin,
Yeah,
when I started the page, I probably would have been like, start sooner. I probably wouldn't have spent the first couple of years of my 20s chasing a girl that I was trying to make love me, and that I thought I'd marry one day, and taking all these courses without any, like, you know, I got a marketing degree with no intention of like wanting to do anything with it, because like I was in general studies, and then I was like, okay,
no,
what
for
am I
sure.
doing? Okay, let's go into marketing. Okay, I would love Mad Men. Maybe it's not even like that. It's not even like that anymore. I can't go in the office and just drink Canadian Dry. Like,
Sadly not.
no. And I'm like, so it's like I did that. It's just I'm like I wouldn't change anything. I think everything that happened the way it happened is the way it was meant to happen. I learned from every misstep I took. Like, early on, Brett's kids reached out to me and were like, "Hey, do you want to do a podcast with Bret Hart?" And I'm like, "Hey, I don't think I'm ready yet. Give me a couple of weeks." And then in those couple of weeks, Nick Hossman did it.
Oh
And I
shit.
always look back at that and I'm like, okay, we're just gonna start saying yes to everything now
Yeah.
because
Yes, and figure it out later,
there's
right?
no couple of weeks or I'm not ready yet. It's like you just got to be ready all the time.
Yeah.
But I would just, if I could, and I can't, and I don't regret anything, I would just, if I wouldn't give this advice to my younger self because I can't change anything, but I would give it to other people. Like, just start. That, like, if you're young and you know what you want to do, like, just start. I find it so impressive that like an MJF, a Mariah May, a Dan Morrison, the Voros twins, Travis Williams. I'm just naming a bunch of wrestlers off the top of my head. Brittany Brooks, Zeta Steele. They're also young and they're starting in this industry because they know they want to be wrestlers.
Yeah.
And they're doing big things and making big moves. And like, that's impressive. Emily J, Tyler Cinco. I don't want to leave anybody out, but I'm just trying to drop as many names as they kind of independent wrestlers that started in their early 20s because they knew they wanted to do this.
Yeah.
And it's like now you have more time because the one thing I'll say for sure is things take time. So the earlier you start, the better. Because things take time, you're gonna have to have patience. But if you start earlier, at least you're giving yourself more time to succeed. I don't think I still feel like I have a ton of time to succeed. Don't get me wrong, but I just felt like, man, like I wish I knew that this could have been a thing, and I started when I was 20.
Yeah.
And I wish maybe I didn't wait till like 2016 to take it seriously, and I maybe thought it was something in 2014. Like when you asked me at the beginning, oh, where it goes, I'm like, I didn't have any for like the first 3-4 years. I didn't know what it was. I just wish I took it a little bit more seriously, and I wish I started a little bit sooner. And I last thing I'm gonna say, there's two pieces of advice that were given to me from people that I try to share to everybody else. First one comes from Cleo Thomas. He was Zero in Holes. Shout out to Cleo, dope dude, big wrestling fan.
Okay.
Connected with him all the time. Every time I go to Cali, or at least I try to. At one point, every time I went, we connected. But then the last couple of times we missed each other. But Cleo is. I remember being on a call with Cleo, being like, "I want to do this, man. I want to do that. Like, I really want to start a podcast, but I want to have a studio, and I kind of want to have a screen behind me, and I need like 2 cameras." And dude was like, "Listen, man, like." You're never gonna start if you want to do all these things. Like, just start the podcast. Because go watch the first episode of Joe Rogan's. They're sitting on a couch, blurry webcam camera. Like, just start and progressively you'll get better. You'll get better. You'll get more comfortable. You'll get a studio. Hell, you might even lose the studio and have to go back to like, you know what I mean? But he says like, just start. So the first piece of advice I try to give people is just start. That goes back to like, if you can start even when you're younger, just start. Whatever you want to do, like if you have an idea of something you want to do, just start it. Even if you're working another job or you got a full-time career, maybe, but there's still something else you want to do, like just start it anyways and see what happens. Right? Like it could pop off. Whoa. I don't know why that popped off, Shinsuke. Edit that out. But and then the second piece of advice that I have, that I got, and this one, I think I first got it from like the Singh brothers, the Bollywood boys, Harv and Gerv, but I'm sure other people have told me this too. I mean, Rosenberg told me the same thing too when I went to him for advice in 2018 after getting rejected from Media Row. Seamus gave me this advice: just show up. If you can be in the place where things are happening, be there. If you can be in the city when WrestleMania weekend's happening, be there. If you like, like I got rejected for so many events, but I'd still be there those weekends. And I still would end up seeing people and networking with people and hanging out with people and keeping my face in the game, right? Like out of sight, out of mind. And I realized for me, especially after 2019, 20, 2021, where like I didn't travel as much and I just started traveling in the last 2 years, like going to WrestleManias and AEW events, stuff, that the opportunities only come because when people see me and the physical me in person, it humanizes you a bit, right? You're not just that guy from the internet.
Absolutely.
And it opens more doors, and they get to actually be like, oh no, who he is on the internet is generally who he is in person too when you talk to him. Like it's the same guy. And also like a little bit less what you might think of me on. Sometimes I feel like people see the wrestling class like, man, this guy just posting girls all the time, must be like a horny bastard. They're like, oh no, he's actually like a regular guy. He just uses the girls because he knows it works. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
I mean, no, I could attest to it. The night that I don't even know if you remember, I barely remember. I've never had a conversation that I woke up and I was like, that happened, but I can't remember the specifics, except for I walked up to you with my friend in one of the bars in Philly.
We met each other.
We literally met each other.
What? So this is
I walked up and I shook your hand, but dude, it was the one night because we were in that hotel, obviously the whatever with the Marriott, and like I was up, we were pre-gaming in our room, we come down and I'm like, wait a minute, I think I know that guy, and I dragged my friend over, I shook your hand, and I was like, dude, and I think I said, dude, you're an inspiration. You were like, I've heard that so many times and I don't even feel it, and you basically said what you said like right now, just a little bit different because we were having a good time. But yeah, it was such a fun experience. And
that's good. What event was that? WrestleMania?
That was just at the hotel. That maybe
Which year?
This was this year, a couple months ago.
Wow.
Yeah. It was really recent.
I know a lot of things just hit me. Like I don't want to make this go super long, but like even like the whole Prime, shout out to Prime. This is
I know. I see you do casual.
So I didn't mean to do that. To be fair, shout out to them though, because they do just keep sending. Like I'll come home and there's just like free drinks in front of my door,
dude,
and I'm like, oh okay. But shout out to Prime. Thank you for that. I like it's bad, right? Like listen, man. Like I'm Punjabi. That's my background. I'm Sikh. Punjabi. I'm born in Canada, born and raised, but like my ethnicity is Punjabi, religion, Sikh, whatever. Yeah. I never understood the like I had so many people come to me like, oh, it's so cool to see another brown boy doing this, or seeing a Punjabi guy doing this, like, and I used to always fly over my head. I'm like, oh, I'm just doing it, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not like doing it for like you sort of like, oh, I'm just doing it for our people. But I then realized how cool it is that I am doing it, and I'm South Asian, and I'm brown, and I'm some sort of minority in this space because I walked into that Royal Rumble media scrum press junket thing for the WWE, and I was like, oh, and then after I went to an AEW, when I noticed that too, I'm like, oh, I am like the only Indian in here.
Right.
That's crazy. I'm like, there's a bunch of Caucasian people, a bunch of Black people, a bunch of Hispanic people. I'm like, oh, I'm literally the only Indian in this place. I am representing my people in this space. So any Indian fan that kind of grew up that loved wrestling but like didn't want to be because that's the thing, right? Like this, to go back really quickly, like I've always loved wrestling. I learned really early on I couldn't be a wrestler. I used to wrestle with my friends and messing around back at wrestling family. I'd break my bones. I'm not athletic. I'm just not gonna lie to myself and say I'm athletic.
Me neither. Yeah.
So that's why I was like, I'm not like I love wrestling, but like I'm not gonna be a wrestler.
Right.
I found a way in, right?
That's
not wrestling. In my own way too, in my own lane. Like sometimes I try to like apply for jobs at WWE and stuff, and they're like, why do you even want to work here? Like you're killing it. I'm like, because I just like want a steady paycheck. But like, yeah, I did find my own lane. Going back to that guy that said that, he's like, you made something out of nothing. Like you just popped out of nowhere when you built this whole thing. And I'm like, that's true, I guess. Yeah.
No, you seriously did. You carved your own path. Like it's so inspirational. It's very cool to see someone able to do that. And really, you're representing your people, and you're also representing the wrestling fan, the everyday wrestling fan that wants to try to do something and get in there, and you're like proving to all of us that it is possible. And it's awesome.
I knocked on their door so much, and God knows, so they could finally say yes to all of you. That's the way I see it.
You walked so we could run.
I lost my page and got it back. I broke every rule, posting copyrighted stuff and using their content to blow up my own stuff. I did everything you probably aren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
So everybody else could do it, and now we can rock out.
Rewind, recap, relive. For over 50 episodes, the revolutionary force in wrestling interviews.